Hello, Tish. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
How are you today?
I'm good.
Starting out the Friday pretty good?
Yeah, well, Mercury's out of retrograde, so that's helpful.
Indeed. So I want to get right into it and ask you about your guitar company and talk about the history of that and your creation of the designs and the models and the pinks and the sparkliness. So could you just give me a brief kind of rundown on how you started and what started that creative process?
Daisy Rock Girl Guitars. It's I don't know how much of a Reader's Digest version I can give you, but I'll try. So in 1998, I had a daughter, Nicole, with my husband, Michael Ciravolo, whom you've obviously met before. And we had Nicole, and he had started running Schecter Guitars about a year prior to that. And when Schecter Guitars at that time, when he had taken it over, it was about 5 people that worked there. And I was one of those people. I came in, first of all, I came in as the first booth girl at the NAMM show when he first took over Schecter's. So my first job with Schecter was sitting on a stool during NAMM show, smoking a clove cigarette and playing a bass and telling people that they should play Schecter guitars. So that was an interesting start. But then we had Nicole in 98. And so I was working there. I did everything from stuffing envelopes and sending out catalogs to answering the phone to... It's just was everything that needed to be done was all hands on deck kind of a position at that time. And this was back when Schecter was, $100,000-$200,000 a year company. So it was very small and growing. And Michael at that time was not my husband. And so we had our daughter, Nicole, and I got pregnant quite fast after we had Nicole with my second daughter. And I was very pregnant, and I was sitting there with Nicole, who was almost 2. And we were drawing one day, and she drew a daisy on a piece of paper. And I took that paper to my husband, and I said, you know what we should do is we should make this into a guitar for her. And he said, like a daisy guitar. And I said, yeah, so something that she would want to play when she grows up. And so he had seen me during the course of the 90s, early 90s, when we started dating. He had seen me go through this process as a female musician where I just didn't get respected as a musician because I was a girl. And I had dealt with a lot of it in the 80s, not as bad as so much as it was in the 90s, because then the Riot Girl movement happened and there was like a different idea of girls that play guitar. But in the 80s, I mean, when I was in my all-female heavy metal band, Lipstick, we would go to sound check and they'd be like, yeah, we don't sound check the chick bands. It was like...
Really? Wow.
And then I would go into the local music store to buy strings for my bass, and it was always like, who's your boyfriend in the band? What are you picking up for the band? Are you the manager? And there was always a lot of who are you sleeping with in the band to be here as a girl. And that would be where I was backstage, if I was, anywhere with the band. And it was always a fight. Like, no, I'm a musician. I'm actually a player. I'm a girl. I play. I'm a girl. And granted, in the 80s, I mean, there was like 5, 6 girl bass players in all of Los Angeles at that time. I mean, you had the Bangles, you had the Go-Go's, you had the Runaways, you had the big girl bands, but, there was
Smashing
just...
Pumpkins?
Yeah, well, right, Darcy. And there was like this handful of girls, and we all... I mean, I played in probably 200 bands in the 80s.
Wow.
Just trying to find... Like, I played in the all-female version of the Psychedelic Furs, and I played in the all-female version of the Sex Pistols. We were like trying to always find like that thing that would make the girls, it would be okay to be a girl in a band and be accepted as that. And a lot of those bands didn't make it out of rehearsal rooms because of the fighting, which I will say happened a lot. As a bass player in a Libra, I'm not that person. I'm usually just the person that's trying to like, okay, can't we all just get along? So I had dealt with a lot of this discrimination as a female musician, and I just didn't want my daughter to have to deal with that. I remember thinking, like, if I could make her a guitar that she would be, first of all, inspired to learn how to play, something that would say to her, oh, I want to play that, instead of this big, black, bulky thing that maybe her dad owns, right? Mm-hmm. That's half the battle, to get a girl interested. And then the other half of that battle is to then try to get to society to accept that a girl could play a guitar just as well as a girl could play piano or could play flute or could play the clarinet. I was like trying to change this concept about girls that play guitar. So I have this drawing. It's a little daisy. I take it to Michael, and I'm like, we should just make Nicole a guitar. So we draw a neck on it, a headstock, and we get this off, and it's, it just doesn't happen overnight. Took it to the luthier at Schecter, Tetsu. He actually turns it from like paper to wood, which is an amazing process to see. And Michael's like, what do you think this should be? Like, what are you saying that this should be? And I'm like, it should have all of the answers that I've had as a female. It should be lighter in weight. It shouldn't be so heavy to hold that it's just cumbersome on your neck and your shoulders. And it should have a slimmer neck profile on it, so it's easier for a girl's hand to like put her in play. I'd bought my first Fender P bass in '85, and it was a baseball bat. I had taken it back to the Guitar Center the next day to the salesman that I had bought it from the first day and said, I can't play it. I need something else. And they were so rude to me that I just found a corner and like played every bass in the store. And I ended up with a Yamaha BX1, which was like a Kabiki ripoff. It was a headless bass, but it was so thin because it was headless that I could actually play it. So that was my bass, right? So we have this drawing. We have a piece of wood. We make it into a sample. We get the samples back. I have a second child all this time. I'm pregnant, having children, and working at Schecter. And we got this guitar in. And I remember it just sitting on the couch, and we were both like, what are we doing with it? What's it going to be, And what do we name it? And it was like a Daisy, maybe Daisy Rock. Like we were just like spitballing and brainstorming. And so we came up with this concept, Daisy Rock Guitars. And immediately ordered some. First Christmas happened. We got the first shipment in. And a musician's friend, which is a friend of ours, Michael Tunn, decided he would put it up on the website just to see, and it sold out. And so we spent 2 days before Christmas, Michael and I did, packing every single box at Schecter with every single guitar we had sold and making Christmas dreams come true for a lot of little girls.
Nice.
And that was the launch. I'd gone to the Rocker Girls Conference in Seattle the month prior to that. I had taken 5 samples with me. And this friend, Tyler Bates' wife, Lisa, at that time was helping me with the promo. So she went to Seattle with me. And it was an amazing experience to have. It was the first Rocker Girl Conference. If you were a musician in the 80s, you had this fanzine called the Rocker Girl Magazine. And it was run by Carla DeSantis. And it was the only magazine that showed females in bands and what they were doing.
Really?
Out of Seattle. So, and I, living in Los Angeles, I had, subscribed to it and been part of it. And like Babes in Toyland, I mean, all these bands that, you just didn't hear on K-Rock. You know what I mean? Like there were all these like real underground bands at that time. And so I'd been a fan of Carla since the 80s, since I was a female musician, knowing that she's the only person in the United States that's actually putting any spotlight on female musicians. And so when she did her first conference, I took 5 samples to Seattle, to the Renaissance Hotel, put it in a room, and started debuting it to all the female musicians up there. And I got a lot of really great response. Met Courtney Love. She loved it. She talked about it in her closing ceremony speeches. She signed my very first Daisy Rock I ever made, and that is the guitar that today is inducted into the NAMM Museum in Carlsbad with her signature on it. And then leaving the hotel, 5 guitars to ship, pack them up, leave them with the concierge, leave, get on a plane, come back to LA. 3 guitars make it.
Oh.
I go back. I'm like, on the security camera, they find 2 of their employees take 2 of the guitars, put it in a laundry bin, cover it in laundry, and wheel it out to a van and steal it. And so they fired them 2, never recovered the 2 guitars. It was like,
damn.
It's like somewhere in some world right now that's worth a lot of money.
Yikes.
Yeah, so that was like a big launch for Daisy Rock Guitars. And that was in October 2000 was the Rocker Girl Conference. In January 2001, I did my very first NAMM show. It was on the back of the Schecter booth upstairs. I didn't have to do Hall E, thank goodness. And it was, the first 2 years at Schecter, it was a challenge. And it wasn't only a challenge going into it, like you think one of the best things you can do in your life is maybe work with your spouse. And that's really great to be able to do that. And Michael and I do that today with Beauty and Chaos. But at that time, he was growing Schecter. Schecter went from this $200,000 a year parts company to $38 million. I mean, and it's not because it just happened. It's because of the brilliance of my husband and the people that he has worked with him, like Mark LaCourte and some other people. But in that time, there was 5 of us, and I was launching this little itty bitty girl guitar company as part of this other kind of bigger guitar company that was just skyrocketing. And, they were doing all the 666 guitars. So here we are at NAMM, and it's like, here, get your 6-pack of all the 666 guitars. And did you see the cute little pink daisies? It was a real disconnect for dealers. And it wasn't because people didn't want it. When I got my first, I had 3x3 space, 6 guitars on the wall. And it was like, I just didn't know if anybody was going to care. And it was 1,000 times during that weekend. That's so cute. Oh my God, that's so cute. And every guy that would walk by would be like, yeah, that's never going to work. And then his girlfriend or his wife or whatever, because it's NAMM. What happens at NAMM stays at NAMM. Or his daughter or his niece or his sister, whatever it was, whatever girl was in that area came to me because I was the only place at NAMM that was representing pink and a fun place for girls to hang out. And I went from like that 3x3 to 4 years later, I had a 20x20 that was pink carpet, pink chandeliers, pink fur on the walls, mirrors everywhere. So I really knew how to tune into the fact that girls just did not feel like there was any place at NAMM for them. And I'd experienced this because I'd been to the NAMM show since the 80s, and as I was endorsed by ESP Guitars back then, which is a funny story. But so it was nice to be able to start this guitar company that launched a movement to get more girls just to learn how to play guitar. And that's really what the mission statement ended up being, doing whatever it takes to get more girls to learn how to play guitar and enjoy music. And that's what we launched in 2000 with Daisy Rock Guitars.
I think it's a brilliant model, and it's the idea of it is great. So I wanted to ask you, so how, I looked on your website, I noticed all the different models you have. So over time, I noticed you started to develop more mature models, I guess you could say.
Right.
And even you're playing your own model in with Beauty and Chaos. So how have you noticed, I would say, how is the evolution of the company? Like, have you had more sales with all kinds of different age groups, or is it still mainly like, are you getting more sales from like younger girls, or how has that been?
When you go back to the start of the company, one of the things that Michael and I decided we had to do was, and it was really more him than I was, he said, this guitar's got to just kick major ass. Like if a guy picks up this guitar, he's got to be like, this is the best guitar I've ever played, even though it's a daisy or a heart or a butterfly. So with that concept, we all of a sudden started getting great accolades from the industry because they were saying, oh, it's not a toy, it's not plastic, it's not just a throw it away kind of guitar. These are going to actually last. These are really great playing guitars. So we did the short scale, we did the artist version, we did the basses, and because we started doing these full scale models, of course we're going to get all the adults come in, and all of a sudden I have more guys than girls that love the guitars. I have the guy from the Butthole Surfers and Jimmy Page and like all these really random fans, which is really strange. Which is awesome in a way, though, because the only reason I started on this projectile of getting a lot of press was because I had Robert Smith from The Cure approve my guitars. I had the guy from Newsweek call me. He had just heard of the company. I was brand new. And he was like, so I don't know if this is like a really great idea or not, but if you have somebody maybe I could talk to. And I was like, I didn't know the Bangles. I didn't know Joan Jett yet. No, I just had started. But Michael knew Robert Smith. And I was like, well, maybe the guy from The Cure. And he was like, I'm his biggest fan. And I was like, okay, so he'll maybe talk to you about how, because we had sent Robert the Red Heartbreaker. And he loved it, which is random. And so, sure enough, the guy from Newsweek called him and he gave him a great quote and he wrote me a poem. Robert Smith wrote me a poem about the guitar. And because Newsweek said, like, this is way cool, Time Magazine picked it up. Because Time picked it up, People Magazine picked it up and did a whole story on me and the guitars, which is a page in People, which is huge. And then because of that, the Today Show had me on, and they had Katie Couric played the guitar during intermission, and we did a whole segment with a bunch of little girls and playing guitar. So it started with this concept of the youth, and that's really where I think it will always lie. But at the same time, you have these mature adults that say, oh, this is the coolest thing. Now, in the year 2020 to 2023, the concept has been, because there's a big independent music, what do I want to say, push out there, that if you go on TikTok, which is something that people do now, there's a whole Daisy Rock Guitars area designed for TikTok where people talk about their Daisy Rock guitars, and they show off their Daisy Rock guitars, and a lot of it is because it's the social pop idea of it.
Yeah.
So it was in the movie This Is 40. It was also Hannah Montana's first guitar she played in the first season of her show. So it has all of these different movies, like, it was in Moneyball, the movie Moneyball. It just has all of these different like pop culture kind of things. So you have like this independent artist that has seen it growing up, right? And, we endorsed bands like the Savvy and Mandy and, like all of these every Disney artist we endorsed at one point. And so you have like these girls now that were 6, 8, and 10 back in the early 2000s, and now they're 20 something, and they're all like, oh, my Daisy Rock. It's like the coolest thing ever. And so they're coming back to it. So. And
I saw on your website, was it, did Avril Lavigne also use one at some point? Okay.
She did the Pink Sparkle, the Daisy Rock acoustic. Yeah, she's super sweet.
Awesome.
And we do the Bangles signature models. So Vicki Peterson from the Bangles plays it, and Wanda Jackson. I don't know if you know who Wanda Jackson is.
Nice.
Do you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so we did a Wanda Jackson signature model with her, which is the guitar that was at the Grammy Museum. They do it on loaners to other museums. Now it's in the Country Hall of Fame. So, yeah.
Looking at your Instagram and based on everything you just talked about, very passionate about women in the music industry. And I feel like, do you feel to this day it's still a struggle compared to how, when you first started, it's like from what you said, it seems like it was a lot harder to be accepted. And how do you feel to this day? Do you feel like it's become more accepted, or do you still find yourself struggling a little bit with any of that discrimination, like you were saying before?
Well, I think because it's decades in the making, so I think it's better today than it ever has been. With that being said, I don't think the stigma is gone. I know that I still get girls that say, yeah, this guy was like, who else is in the band? You're like, what are you here? You still get that concept. Yeah. You still have the chauvinistic approach from males to females about playing. Mm-hmm. And then there's the whole other concept of it is it a girl guitar anymore if there's the theys and the thems and the he's and the hims and the she's and the her, It's like, where does it lie in that new gender identity fluidity that is happening?
Yeah.
But I do believe discrimination still happens to females. I think the door's wider open. I think anybody that's broken the MI glass ceiling, like myself, there's a few girls that have. I think that we open that door a little wider for a lot of girls that'll come after us and do things, but it's still there.
Yeah, I mean, I asked too because I also am in a project with my girlfriend, and she plays bass, and nice. I have heard things that she's told me about being, discrimination from her own personal experience, and it just blows my mind. And I get it. There's always going to be those people that just can't. They can't get it. Like they're set in their ways, and I guess that there will always be people like that. But it does seem to me that it has become more just normal, and I think it's great that you're still representing that, so
thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about Beauty and Chaos. Did you start with Michael right from the beginning, or did you come in later, or has it always been a project you guys have worked on together from the beginning?
When you say did I come with him in the beginning, I mean
did you guys started the project together?
No, he started with Roseanne.
Okay.
Yeah, he started writing the music with Roseanne and then developing that concept into what is it going to be? What is the singer going to be? What is the song going to be? Who are we going to invite for this? Mm-hmm. I was there in somewhat of like the background. I played bass on a couple songs. I did background vocals on a couple songs, but by no means was it there wasn't three of us in the room. There was the two of them really creating all the music.
Gotcha.
And then getting it to a certain point. And, they know each other because of me. So did you know the story about why Michael Roseanne and my husband know each other?
No.
It's very funny. So Michael Ciravolo and I met in 1992 because I was in an all-female heavy metal band called Lipstick, and I was playing at the FM station at a show called Battle of the Bitches. And he hates metal. At that time, he did. And he had a backup singer in his band that was friends with me because I worked I didn't at that time, but before I'd worked at a restaurant called Duke's Coffee Shop next to the Whiskey A Go-Go on Sunset Boulevard. I'd worked there for a few years in the 80s. And we were friends. I was friends with Christy, and she was the backup singer in his band. And she had dragged him down to the FM station to see me play bass because he was in between relationships and I was in between relationships, and she thought we would, And so I had the flu that day, really bad. So I didn't make it to sound check. And so I literally walked into the FM station at 10 to 10, walked to the bar, did a shot of Jack Daniels, walked on stage, did 45 minutes of dropping to one knee and headbanging this way and then headbanging this way. We had a whole choreographed routine in Lipstick. And then walked off stage, just I have to go home. I'm dying, right? And she stops me and she's like, meet my friend. And I was like, hi, I'm leaving now. And so I left. And so he called me. We made, dinner plans. And he called me. And so we were supposed to go out on Thursday night for dinner. And the LA riots happened. And so he called me and he said, that day, I worked at Hollywood Center Studios at that time. It took me 4 hours. I lived in West Hollywood. It took me 4 hours to drive 3 miles because LA gridlocked. I don't know. Were you here for the riots? Were you even born for the riots?
I was alive, but no.
Okay,
yeah.
Good. It was great. I mean, LA gridlock like you've never seen. I sat at Crescent Heights and watched the light change 30 times. I was just astounded, right, that this was happening. I get back to my shoebox of an apartment in West Hollywood. This guy calls me. Are you okay? I'm like, what? He's like, well, we had dinner plans. I was like, but the riots? And he's like, but are you okay? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, do you have anything for dinner? And I was like, no, I had orange juice in the fridge. It's like, no. He's like, I'll be right there. And he hangs up the phone. And I call my friend Chris. I'm like, who the hell? And she's like, he's a nice guy. I'm like, don't worry. And he shows up at my house 45 minutes later. And he has a chicken salad from the Robin Hood, a little pint of Jack Daniels because he knows that's what I drink. And he brought a 38 special with 6 extra bullets. And he puts it all on my dining room table. And he goes, I'm here.
Nice.
I got you.
How sweet.
And I was like, my knight in shining armor.
And that's where it all started.
That's where it all started, 92. So, we started living together. I played in a couple of bands. He had played in this band at the time called Congregation. They broke up. He got this other band, Twist and Vain. They were amazing. This band was amazing. I mean, if the singer hadn't had a drinking problem, and Curtis, God love him, I still love Curtis to this day. He just had issues, but they were this close. You get in those bands where you're this close, right? And he blew it. And so I knew that they were on at that point where it was going to be done. And I was driving in Hollywood and I saw a flyer on a telephone pole. And I picked up, it said looking for a guitar player. And I picked the thing off the little tag off the flyer and went home and called that number. And I said, I don't know who you guys are, but if you need the best kick-ass guitar player in Los Angeles, that's my boyfriend. It's Michael Ciravolo. And you should totally see him. He's playing at the Club Lingerie this Friday night, blah, 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 blah. And that ended up being Michael Rozon.
Okay.
So Michael Rozon walked into the Club Lingerie, and Michael played with Twist and Vain. And at the last song with Twist and Vain, he took the guitar off and smashed it against the brick wall. And that was it. That was the end of the band. And Rozon showed up. I think he had on a top hat and latex gloves, and he was walking with a cane. Not because he was scribbling, but that was the look.
The style. Yeah.
It was
a
a very strange guy. And so we walked out in the front of the club, and he just looked at it and he goes, yeah, I think you're my next guitar player. And that was it. And the rest of is history.
Wow. I love it.
So they all owe it to me.
So I love that you guys have seen each other rise throughout the years, from the beginning of both of your companies and with the music,
right?
And I love that. I love you see each other, the ups and downs, the good times and the bad times, and just riding it out over the years. It's
right.
Just I admire the dedication to that kind of a relationship, because not only is it a family relationship, but it's also work and music. That's a lot. That's a lot
It's a lot.
that's a lot to take on. And it's great to see that, because it's so hard to, relationships in general are just so hard to maintain over time, and especially when there's so many factors. You're in the music, you're in the career, the music, and the family. So it's like being able to sustain that for a long period of time is just it's not easy. So
No,
it's great
it's
to see that you
not.
guys are so strong, and it's like, I struggle with that too, because as you know, I think this might be a good topic to transition into, is being in a band with your spouse. It's, I know, like when I was younger, I kind of looked at that situation when I would see like couples or people that were married or in a relationship playing in a band together. I would kind of look at that and go like, wow, that seems like a really big risk, or like really like
Right.
extremely difficult, like, because not only is just the relationship hard on its own, but just being in a band with people is extremely hard, but both at the same time.
Yeah.
Wow. So I
Right.
kind of, when I was younger, like I said, I looked at that like, wow, that seems like, insane. But now when I'm actually in the situation, right? Because my girlfriend and I, we're in a project together. It's we're extremely serious about it. It's something that it's a passion. It's just something we're doing for the love of it. We're not expecting to, be rich and famous, but it's something that we both do because we love music. Like, she has other projects she's in, I'm involved with other stuff, but it's just something that we come together to do because we can.
Right.
But navigating that can be very, very difficult, and for multiple reasons, and as you know. So maybe could you let's talk about like what challenges have you faced, as being in a relationship and in a band simultaneously. Like what do you say like are the best things about it, and kind of the struggles about it?
The compromise.
Yeah.
There's always a huge compromise. I would never suggest launching a company and having 2 children all within 2 years. It was like, because that was physically tolling, really, really hard to do. And then, try and figure out how to go to NAMM for 4 days with a newborn that I can't take, when I'm breastfeeding. Like all of those things that you like all of a sudden are faced with that you never knew that you would deal with. But then with the band situation, during the time that I've done Daisy Rock, I've played in other bands. So I was in Sassafras for years, and Michael and I had a band in the 90s called Die Bitch Die, which was really all these songs that we just talked about our exes in. Like how much we didn't like our exes. So hence the name, Die Bitch Die. And we had, like, in bands that he had been in, I'd come in as a bass player a couple of times. And then bands I had been in, he'd come in as guitar player a couple of times. But nothing like what's happened with Beauty and Chaos over the last 5 years. But the challenge always is, how do you compromise your time? Who's going to take care of the children while one of us is at rehearsal? Who's going to make sure that they have dinner while one of us is going to band practice? Who's going to make sure that they're getting their bows while one of us is dealing with being a parent? Mm-hmm. And so I took that role of the parent in the early 2000s while he was out touring with Gene Loves Jezebel and playing with different musicians. So, he would be like, I need to go out. I'm going to be gone this weekend. I'm going to be playing. And granted, we needed the money. He needed to go make the $200 so we could buy diapers. It wasn't like I was sitting there going, why is he just doing this? This is just about his ego. I knew why he was doing it, because we needed the money, So it was my job was to make sure that the girls were taken care of. That being said, when they got a little older and then I was in a band, it would be like, no, it's Friday night and I'm playing. You need to go get the girls from school and take them home and feed them and do their homework and bathe them, and then try to get to the sitter and then come see me play. you know. So the girl, I think what you're saying about how do you balance work and how do you balance a band for the last 25 years of our life has been also how do you balance your family life and that, you know. And we're not the only ones that deal with it. I mean, you look at musicians that are out on tour and they have kids. You're like, well, someone's staying home taking care of the kids because you can't take them on tour with you. Like my girlfriend and the Dolly Rots, they have 2 kids. And so far they've been able to manage taking River and Daisy on their tour, and I love the fact that they're everything that they do, they're going to incorporate their kids in. But at some point, you can't, just because your kids have a life. They have soccer or volleyball or whatever, ballet, whatever it is, and it's hard to just make their life all of a sudden just be about what your performance life is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the balance always, one of the reasons that I really respected and fell in love with Michael is because when I met him, he was unlike a lot of other men that I had dated or known, or actually had been married to. I was married before. He had like this drive. And at first it drove me crazy because every weekend and every holiday he had plans. It wasn't like, okay, so Saturday, I know, let's just hang out. We could maybe watch a movie, or, like how other people like, we'll go to the park or we'll go for a hike. He'd be like, I'm in the studio. I'm writing. I'm in the studio. I'm writing. I'm in the studio. So for 30 years, we've been together. And for 30 years, this is his life. And so when it's, if he wasn't in Beauty and Chaos, before that it was Human Drama, before that it's always been part of who he is. He doesn't unplug. And his kids get really angry with him about it and say, you have to unplug. So kind of a lot of part of the reasons why we do family vacations or we do our RV life together that we do is for him to get away from being able to be in a studio because he's obsessed.
I can relate.
That with pedals. We have about 500 pedals in our life.
500.
Yeah, it just is a little much. It's a little much.
I mean, I have a lot of pedals, but I didn't.
Like how many do pedals do you have? I have like 4, and that's enough.
I maybe like 50, but 500.
Yeah,
oh my
it's
goodness.
Like I keep like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
It's a serious addiction.
It's a hoarding problem, is what it is.
Yeah, it's bad. It's a problem I have as well. But yeah, I love that. I think it takes I think a reason why these kind of relationships can work so well is, first of all, it's like you're both musicians. You understand the end goal. You understand what you guys want to do. Like, you both have that drive. So I think that's a part of what has made it work for so long, is because you get each other. You have the same type of outlook on life and morals, and you're in the same headspace. And I think the problem comes into when, say they're a couple and then someone has to go on tour, but it doesn't survive because the other person is like, wait, what about me? I'm at home. I'm doing everything while my spouse is out living their dream and I'm sitting here doing all the work. And I think, yeah, that's true, but it's about a balance, like maybe if you can just accept the person for who they are and know that will come around. Like when they're off tour and then you have time to do your thing, then the other person will come in and take care of what needs to be taken care of. I just think, having that understanding is so important. And it's not easy, but
it's not easy. And I think you hit the head there when you said, when you're both in the same headspace, when you're both like, where do you get your fun from? Well, your fun is playing bass in a band. You're going to want to do that fun thing, even though my fun is also being with my kids. My fun is also going out of town with them and enjoying time with them. But at the same time, what's the hardest thing to be is in that same headspace with somebody when you're both striving for that same adrenaline rush you get from playing and from being in those things. I just looked at my husband, especially in the early years with the girls, like I said, we really needed the money for the diapers. So like him going out on tour and playing a lot on the weekends was I really appreciated it. But at the same time, I launched a company and I'm raising 2 little girls, and I have a husband who's away a lot and working a lot. I mean, Schechter didn't get to be who they are because he clocked in 9 to 5. It just, he never has clocked in 9 to 5. It's never been, this phone's attached to him 24/7. And that's just where his success has come from and where it lies. And I understand that. With Daisy Rock Guitars, I had this really big, huge success. And then in the last couple of years, especially since COVID, it's been like on the downside, which is okay because we're going to come back in 2024, which will be fun. But that's not what I don't base myself. First and foremost, I'm a mom and a wife. and he's my best friend. So as you do with anybody who's your best friend, you just want to be their biggest cheerleader and cheer them on, and But yeah, there you have to watch, if there's any words of wisdom, you have to watch how much resentment you can build up with somebody if you don't feel like you're living your full life at the same time.
Oh yeah.
And that's what I go back to compromise. I had the kids last night. You need to deal with them tonight. I know you're, even if you have those conversations like who's making the most money and who owns a company and who doesn't own a company. Like when you have those really hard conversations about what your ego is playing into, it's not really what life is about. Life really is about what you're doing with that person, that love that you have for that person, and the love you have for your family. And it's time spent. That's all it really is time spent with those that you love. That's what you're going to think when you're leaving. I talked about this in my song, The Afterlife. This is, when I died and came back, you come back and you go, what is your life? Your life isn't about the achievements and the plaques. I have a office full of plaques. I've done a lot of firsts. I broke glass ceilings. I've been the first and the only and the first and the original, and all of that was fantastic, but that's not what my life is. That's not who I am. It doesn't define who I am. My life is about love and giving love to my husband and supporting him in his endeavors, giving love to my children and supporting them in their endeavors.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think sometimes with, people are, it seems it's so simple really what you just said, and it's so true. But I think certain people struggle to realize, I think maybe once you get to a certain age or a certain understanding within a relationship, but, people are just, you see people chasing after, the salary, or I need to make X amount of money. I need to make, it's about all the stepping stones that they're looking at.
Right.
But, I realized too, at a certain point, it's once you get there, or once you get that thing, then what? It's just another thing. But if you don't have the support of your family, or if you're, the person you're in a relationship with just isn't getting it, or they're not supporting you, then it feels like it doesn't really matter because the love isn't there.
Right.
So I think that's a great point. And it's true. It's so true, because I've been in relationships before when, like what you said before, it's so hard to turn off. And, I'm sure there were times when it was frustrating for you, but in the long term, you understand why he was doing it. It was, for the family, for you, and for himself, of course. But I've been in relationships where it was just so hard to get the other person to understand, look, I'm not doing this because I don't want to be around you, or I don't want to spend time with you. It's because it's for the greater goal, so that, we can have a better life. And sometimes it's just been such, and I mean, Xander gets it. I mean, the relationship I'm in now, because we're also very similar, kind of like you and Michael. She has very similar goals. She has that drive. She gets it.
Right.
So we have these conversations too. But in the past, I've really struggled, because it's, especially when you're taking, your career is ramping up, and you're not really you're not making a lot of money, and you're not getting to the point, people don't, if they don't see you're succeeding in what you're doing, but you're taking so much time away from them, they kind of lose that. They're like, well, what are you even doing? Where are you? You're not, you're not present with me. And just getting, to be on the same page with that has been very difficult for me in the past, but now it's all good. But it's just great to hear that, from you, and just that other couple's experience. Look, it's a tough road. There's so many ups and downs. There's so many dark times, but if you can just keep it together and know it's all about love, and as long as you have that constant communication with each other, then it can work.
It can work. And that's a maturity level. Now, I was thinking about this. I call it the shaking up of the snow globe moment. Sometimes people in life, they create change through crisis. And I realized that when I had employees that worked for me for Daisy Rock, and they just have things, they create this crisis so that they can make a change in their life, because they don't know how to just make a change. And that's just how people operate a lot of the times.
Self-sabotage, right?
Right. So I go back to this story of the girls were 3 and 1, which means that there's a lot of, and I just launched Daisy Rock Guitars a year prior. And so here's a lot of taking the girls to daycare, going to Schechter in Hollywood, when it was in Hollywood at that time. We lived in Burbank. over the hill to work, a 9 to 5 job, getting off work, going back and getting the girls from daycare, going home and taking care of the kids. Our brakes had gone out on our car. So that morning, Johnny and Davina, who works at Schechter, and Mike has known since he was 18 years old, we call him. He's like, of course, I'll help. He comes over. He picks us up. He takes our kids to daycare with us. He takes us to Hollywood. He comes back at 5 o'clock. All the way to daycare, Mike and I are in an argument about guitars, about guitar weights, about parts, about bridges, about necks, about strings, you name it. We're just having this ongoing argument about it. All the way to daycare, all the way to Hollywood. He picks us up at 5 o'clock. We get in the car. We fought about it all day long. We get in the car. We go all the way home. We pick up dinner. We go home. He has dinner with us. We feed the kids. We put them to bed. We get in the jacuzzi afterwards. He's sitting outside the jacuzzi having a cigarette. And at some point, he's like, can you guys just shut up? It's like, I have been around you 12 hours now, and all you have done is fight about guitars. Like in this whole, and it was like such an easy moment that maybe one of your friends would say to you, but it was such a snow globe moment for me to shake up my world, to say, this is not the life I want to have. This is not who I want to be. I don't want to be the wife that's always fighting about and pushing. I'd put my husband in this situation when he was president of Schechter and I was doing Daisy Rock as a division where he had to wear all of these different hats. So he's president, and then he's my husband. And he's got guys coming to him, go, we need the finances to do this kind of ad, or we need the finances to bring in these kind of guitars. And I'm going, and I still want to bring in Daisy Rocks. And he's like, but if I bring in the other guitars, it has a higher profit than if I bring in the Daisy Rocks. And these guys are living off of profit. And I'm like, but who's sleeping with you? Like that kind of pressure is insane.
Stressful.
It's insane in a marriage.
Yeah.
So that was a snow globe moment for me, and that's when I started thinking, okay, I should probably get Daisy Rock outside of Schechter, because it just felt like it's really going to help our marriage in some ways, for us not to always be in these big, huge financial decisions that are affecting so many other people, where it's detrimental to his employees in some ways, and because it benefits me, his wife. You couldn't separate this is a business and this is a marriage. There was just no way to separate it. So I moved out in 2003 and became part of Alfred Music Publishing, and I was there for 13 years, which is a really great experience to have. But that was my snow globe moment in a relationship. Like, what am I going to do to rescue this? Because there was no marriage therapy or anything like that in that situation that was going to understand what we were dealing with. It
Totally.
just made me realize, like, there's very few people on this planet. Give me a male and a female that own guitar companies, that run guitar companies together.
Right.
Like, there's nothing out there. There's no example. There's no, here's how you fix this. So there was like, okay, so we're writing the rules as we go. And so it was good. It was good to, like, all of a sudden, like, we could breathe more around each other, because we were having those big decisions outside, away from each other, and we were just having to go back and make decisions as a family about our family stuff and not have it intercede so much.
Yeah.
So those moments happen in your life. I think you'll have those.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about some of the recent Beauty and Chaos stuff before we wrap it up. So when you're playing bass in the project, are you coming up with bass lines like on the spot, or do you listen to a track that Michael writes and you do your thing with it on your own time, or how does that go in the studio?
Well, let's just be really clear here about how guitar players try to learn and play bass lines.
Hey, I'm guilty of that.
Yeah, so is every guitar player I've ever known. And there's a certain way a guitar player plays that's not a bass player. I only play bass guitar. That's all I know how to do. So that's what I do. So it's an ongoing fight in an argument way of, he'll come up with a bass line and I'll be like, well, that's good. Now let me play it like a bass player and make it better. That's just the reality. But they write, really, both him and Rozon write some really great riffs.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
For the bass, I haven't done a lot of bass playing in Beauty and Chaos, but the couple of songs I've done, they obviously came up with the stuff first because they're writing all the music. That's what they do. As far as the lyrics go, with Look Up and with the Afterlife, Afterlife, that was all me. And I think both times, I think he said he was just shocked beyond compare that he just kind of gives me this music and he doesn't hear anything. And then he brings me in the studio like, oh, you want to come lay down some, vocal tracks on this? And I go in and he had no idea both times what I'd been working on. So, and he said it was really shocking to both him and Roseanne because it's like he forgets that I'm talented or something. He like is all of a sudden like, oh, wow, you did a really great job. It's like, yeah, you married me. Did you forget?
So yeah, you just kind of come in and you kind of just he hasn't heard it before at home or anything. You just come in the studio and you're like, here it is, and and then it works out from there.
Because I can't. The muse in me with me is not going to allow me to be in a living room and have him go, okay, so I'm thinking it should go. That's not going to happen in my world.
Gotcha.
I'm going to be in my rocking chair writing this song with my muse coming through me and coming out with what I think it should be, and then I'm going to just present that with what I hear. And they're either going to love it or they're not going to love it. Yeah. And both times they loved it, so it was a blessing.
So with I've seen the music videos you guys have done together. So how much goes into? Are you guys collaborating on the sets and stuff? Is that like a collaboration, or are you coming in and you're like, do you have most of the ideas, or is it all Michael, or is it everyone together is like, let's try some different sets, or how does that work?
It's been every video is a different story. Mostly it's Michael. And he has a vision, and then we start trying to. It's like having a director come to you with a vision of what they think the scene is going to be, and then my job would be like, okay, then what's on the wall? What color is it? What are we wearing? What is helping that? Yeah. Whitney came in very strong with these are the outfits we're going to wear. This is what it's going to look like, because Tim was doing the video with us, so they had already really sketched out. That was one of the very few ones that I just showed up and got dressed and got makeup on and then did what they wanted to see happen.
Gotcha.
Grasp the Stars was different. That was all Michael, I can't think of all the videos because there's been so many of them. The one that we did with Ashton, that at the prop house, that was a lot of Michael. So I would say, easily 90%. Maybe Stranger was a lot more with Kat because Kat was really trying to have this concept of two personalities in her song. And so, and then having our daughter be the statue in Stranger, cool. With having him painted her like a statue. And, so Michael's always trying to bring the girls in, like they're on the first photo cover album of Beauty and Chaos. And he always tries to like have them come be part of it. But I would say as far as the artistic design of each of the videos, it's his vision. It's him and Michael Roseanne's music. Doing the video live with Al, doing the 20th Century Boy was a lot of fun. So I always look at it like, what's my role? And then what am I trying to project as a female musician in that role to inspire other girls to want to do it? And that's kind of where my brain starts from. Like, am I going to be like the sexy, hot rock star in this one? Or like the out of space E.T. looking, it's like they're all over the place. Afterlife was I felt like my best because it was my song. It was my vision for it. Talked to Tim about just having like out there looking at trying to figure out how to get a director to understand what different worlds look like. And he really went and found the place. He like said, I was up at Topanga Canyon and I found this tree and it's the perfect tree for your whole video. And I was like, okay. And then he tried to get me to go look at the tree. And then we had all gotten COVID and I had pneumonia and I couldn't climb a hill. So that we got pushed off. And finally I got better. And I finally climbed this huge hiking hill, hiked up like 25 minutes and was like, oh my God, it's the tree.
Perfect.
So he had the vision. Tim did, but mostly it's Michael.
Yeah, I can't remember what year it was, but it was the one with Al when you guys are at Skinny's, I believe.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I was there because Vicente asked me to come by to, I can't remember what I was helping with exactly. I think it was, might have just been crowd stuff.
Right.
But yeah, Vicente and I have, we've been growing closer throughout the years. I've helped him on a lot of different stuff, but I think that was the first experience I've had with your project with the Chaos.
Yeah, so, that was a fun day.
Yeah, that was cool. So before we wrap it up, what can we expect this year from from Daisy Rock, or you said you're waiting until 2024?
Well, the
or?
comeback would be 2024, which means
Okay.
that we're starting to work. It takes anywhere from 12 to 18 months to ramp up for guitars. It's
Yeah.
a long lead time. So we're starting to look at what is the most requested is the Heartbreaker guitar. So I have a lot of Heartbreaker enthusiasts out there. I had done a licensing deal with Cartoon Network back in the early 2000s, and we have a Mojo Jojo guitar out there that's selling for about $10,000 on eBay these
Wow.
days. And but the actual Powerpuff Girls guitar was a heart design guitar with the girls flying on it. So it's I think it's the one that's the most popular with the indie girls right now. So I don't think we'll bring back all 139 models I was doing at one time. I think we'll just bring back a couple of the best sellers and. I don't want it to fizzle because it's kind of fizzled the last couple of years with COVID. I was, in a different distribution agreement with Jam Industries, and they just didn't know what to do with it, which God love them. God bless their little hearts. They just didn't know what to sell, how to sell a girl guitar, which it's typical when I'm in a room with 5 guys with gray hair in Connecticut going, so this whole thing about girls wanting to learn to play guitar, you go, oh, I don't know if they know what they're doing. But I have a, no, everybody loves a comeback. That's kind of where I'm at with it. So it's going to be my big Rocky moment in
Great.
2024. Daisy Rock.
What's the name of the model that you play in the Beauty and Chaos videos?
Oh, just the Daisy Rock bass? Yeah. That's
I love
the Rock
that.
Candy bass.
Yeah, I love that one.
Yeah. Thank you.
For sure.
Thank you.
What can we expect this year from Beauty and Chaos?
Well, as my role goes, I'm all about the support system. So I'm trying to make sure that everything that Michael is dreaming up of doing is something that we can do and that is executed. So, my life is really to make his life easiest so he can do the president of Schecter Guitars and running Beauty and Chaos. And then, of course, we play in Gene Loves Jezebel. So I play bass and he plays guitar in that. And we got a show coming up next Thursday at the
Sweet.
Whiskey. And then we're playing the Vampire Ball. So I think this year, for me personally, it's to get out and play some bass and do some live shows with Gene Loves Jezebel, which I love doing. It's a lot of fun.
Is it the Los Angeles Vampire Ball?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. You know what's funny? I went to, this was in 2000, this was like 10 years ago now, but I think it was one of the first Austin Vampire Ball. It was the Austin Vampire Ball.
Okay.
And then they started doing it in LA, and I haven't been in a while, but it was awesome. So I haven't been to the Los Angeles ones, but they look amazing. So that's cool that you guys are going to be performing. When is that?
February, I want to say the 19th.
Oh,
I think
sweet.
I'm right about that.
I'm going to
yeah.
have to, I might have to come check that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be killer. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's been great talking to you and learning more about your company and
Thank
everything
you.
that you've been doing with the project. So it's great to have you on. And I look forward to seeing what comes of 2023 and the rise, the resurgence of Daisy Rock.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we have a lot of Beauty and Chaos that will come out this year. I think my husband's on this steering the ship of doing it a little differently and coming out with one song and then a video and then a song and a video. So there's going to be so much more fun stuff this year. So, but thank you. It was really nice meeting you, and thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.